So in light of the events in the past few days in Ceuta, Spain, I thought I'd make a video talking about the more general issue of immigration and demographics in Western countries. This is something that's been on my mind for quite a while, maybe for the last 5 years, for sure. And what has happened in Ceuta, I mean, it's an enclave of, like a North African enclave of Spain. And what's happened there just seems to be part of a slow culmination of events that are leading up to something, I think, something really big. And maybe not particularly good. It's kind of scary what the implication of that event could be. And I think maybe to kind of understand this better, maybe we have to go back in time, back to 2016, when Trump got elected. I think politically, this culmination of events, it starts back then. So 2016. I'm going to try to outline my thoughts of how politics in the West is changing. Dude, go! So, okay, ever since Trump was elected in 2016, many countries around the world have started moving toward the right, politically speaking. If we look at the Western countries, Jesus, that guy just ran a red light. But yeah, that guy just ran a red light. He didn't want to go left. Took him forever to turn left. Had to honk at him. And then frickin' ran a red light. Just not paying attention, man. Anyway. Many countries around the world started moving toward the right, politically speaking. And so Western countries have also been shifting to the right. Trump was the kind of big shock at the beginning, the first kind of initial shock. And then ever since then, there's been a slow movement to the right. It's not like immediate or anything. And much of that is due to the failures of the left. Okay, liberals have been utterly unable to deal with the inherent social and economic issues experienced by Western countries and their societies. And so the people are increasingly perceiving the left to be the source of those crucial problems. And I can list many issues, but I'm just going to focus on immigration, I guess a little bit of demographics by extension, and then also a little bit about globalization. So the left is perceived to be too ideological in the face of reality, like the reality of immigration, the reality of a deteriorating economy and rising social and demographic problems. The left is perceived as incompetent, unable to fix these problems. Whatever the failings of the left may be, the right is jumping into that void, that vacuum. Okay, and they're trying to capitalize politically. The right is still, however, nascent. They're not like dominant yet. Because society and like the institutions in society and the halls of power, they're still fundamentally liberal. They've been for decades, many decades, like since the end of World War II, probably. It's just since then everything's been more liberalized, and so it's difficult for the right to change. It makes it difficult for the right to change politics quickly, and then couple that with the fact that the population of Western countries tends to be more liberal, right? It's like, yes, there are conservatives in the West, but in many ways they're kind of, the conservatives of the West are kind of like the liberals of yesteryear. They still believe in that old classical liberalism. They call themselves that. They're not really conservatives at all, except in name, because real conservatism would be considered radical to the conservatives of today, and certainly to the liberals, because that involves things like nationalism, religiosity, and even monarchy in some cases. Monarchy. That's why the left calls the ascendant right, the currently ascendant right, as far right. Because from their perspective, these people seem much more radical than the right that they're used to. The right that they're used to is like the fiscal conservatives, evangelicals, like those kind of people, at least in the US. But they're not serious conservatives, and they're kind of easy to deal with. And the left has learned how to handle them. The left is still dominant over all these decades, and they learned how to handle these fiscal conservatives and evangelicals, and they don't consider them a threat. They've been dealing with them for a long time, decades and decades. And they've not been a real threat to leftist politics. But yes, we now have an ascendant, quote-unquote, far right, which I'll just call the right. We have that in the US, in Europe, Britain, Germany, France, etc. And they're gaining popularity and slowly taking power. But they still don't have enough power to make a serious move and to disrupt politics and society in any real way. But the establishment politicians, who are mostly left-leaning, don't have an answer to them other than name-calling or maybe using legislative tools to prevent them from gaining power. Now, I think this might work for a temporary amount of time, but eventually the establishment will not be able to contain them. Now, from the way I see it, this new right, while it's successful in some areas, it's still deficient in other very fundamental ways. And this prevents them from gaining far more political momentum. And I promise this is related to what happened in Spain. Much of the right in Europe or the US remains obsessed with immigration. They really don't spend enough time on other topics, which makes the right-wing parties seem like they're just single issue parties, right? Like, immigration is an important issue, but that's not the only one that people are concerned about. The right does correctly identify the problems with immigration, but the thing is, even though that's their main, like the main thing that they focus on, they still don't provide enough detail about how they would fix it in a realistic way. Okay? And the popular thing to do nowadays is talk about deportation. Deportation. And after what happened in Ceuta, I'm sure you're going to hear more about deportation. Like, listen to Rupert Lowe from Restore Britain Party in the UK. He talks about deporting millions of people from the UK. Deporting millions of people from the UK. I mean, I guess the first thing to ask is, how do you do that? Like, actually, how do you do that? What's the procedure for that? We saw how it went down in the US when ICE tried that a little too hard. Okay, they were a little too strict on that, let's say. And we know how it ended. They had to cool it, they had to back away a little bit because the tension was getting a bit too hot. Even Trump understood that it won't be a good idea politically. So we have to back off to a certain extent. Okay, I mean, ICE is still doing whatever they're doing right now, but they had to temper things a little bit. Because if you want to be, let's say, a democratic country or one based on rule of law, or, okay, putting that aside, if you just want to be humane and maintain some basic decency in how you treat people, maybe you shouldn't just march into neighborhoods and rip people out of their homes and throw them into trucks like cattle. So what is Mr. Lowe of Restore Britain going to do with those illegal millions? But okay, let's just put that aside, and Rupert Lowe aside. Does the right give much thought to other issues? Okay, let's just put aside immigration. Do they think about other problems that plagues their countries? And to me, it doesn't seem like they think about it that much. Like, if they want to truly be taken seriously by voters, they need to offer them something more than just anti-immigration emotion and like the gratification of cleaning up their country. For example, this is just, okay, just my thought, some thought I had. The right, for example, they absolutely need a concrete economic plan. And that's something that I hardly hear them talking about, a proper economic plan. And if they want to keep their anti-immigration, it's fine. They could fuse it into an economic plan. They can advocate for economic nationalism. Okay, how? Make a plan that talks about replacing skilled immigrants and labor immigrants with AI and robots. Maybe that sounds far-fetched, but you could take some pretty concrete and practical measures for developing AI and robotics, like those industries, that would allow various sectors in your country to hire native workers whenever possible, while relying on machines to fill the gap that is currently being filled by immigrants. So in that example, you basically fuse an anti-immigration policy with an economic policy. And basically you replace the need for immigrants with machines. So you don't need immigrants anymore. I know it's an ambitious project, but isn't it also kind of visionary? Isn't it also kind of attractive? Like, if you think about it, you hit so many birds with one stone here. You address the concern about immigration by minimizing its necessity. You invest in and build up new industries that would have lasting effects into the future and allow you to stay up to date in like the highest technology sectors. You secure your economy by making it more self-reliant instead of constantly needing foreign labor. You offer the natives of your country jobs and opportunities that would have been previously being taken by immigrants. And if they don't want the jobs, well, then you use AI and robots. Like, if you're a right-winger, you're Rupert Lowe, and you love your people so much, then you would force companies to prioritize hiring your people and training them. Like, that's your beloved nationalism, isn't it? You make the industries of your country work for the people who live there. That's your ultimate goal, to make the ultimate lives of the people living there better. And by doing that, you gain unions on your side, blue collar workers. Now, of course, people's jobs would still be replaced with AI. And there's going to be a bunch of them who will be jobless. But guess what? There will be less of those people to deal with, since you don't have a constant flow of immigrants into the country. You could offer them something like universal basic income or pathways for decent living, right? But you will have less people to do that for. You don't have a flow of immigrants, or you have much less. I know this is not capitalism, right? Maybe it's some kind of socialism, I don't know. But if you're a nationalist, when did an economic model like capitalism take priority over the well-being of your people? Aren't your people like almost sacred to you? So who cares if it's capitalism or socialism or something else? Those are just labels. That's just one example that I have. But I hope you understand what I mean by it. The right needs a vision to inspire people, right? Like the left had a vision. They were talking about equality, globalization, human rights, individual liberty. Like those are visionary ideas, and they won everyone over since the end of World War II. But that era is coming to an end, right? We can't do globalization anymore in the world that we live in. At least not like we used to. And many of the left's other policies have been taken too far, to the point of being detrimental to society and the economy. So the public is disillusioned right now. They don't trust the left, and the left cannot, because of their ideological rigidity, solve the problems that we have. Like replacing immigrants with AI and robotics. Can you imagine the left ever agreeing to that? Even though it will be beneficial to the country, they would never abandon immigration, because that platform has been so entrenched into their ideology for decades that it's just ossified at this point. Even though it's hurting them politically, even though it's hurting the people in the country. But they're still not going to take that platform out of their... Sorry, they're not going to take that issue out of their platform. They're going to continue to support immigration. So the left just can't be the solution at the moment, unless they change their politics completely, which is unlikely. And we see this example with the recent prime minister in the UK. I don't remember his name. They changed prime ministers like the Romans changed emperors in the crisis of the 3rd century. I don't know who the recent guy is, like Burnham. He's a liberal. He has done almost nothing to address the problems of immigration, when he knows that people care about that. Like the people of his party or political leaning will just not address this issue. They won't even accept that there's an issue. But the right, would the people then, as a result of this, automatically trust the right? They won't. Okay? Once you go beyond those people who have been won over by the right, like the initial group of people who've been won over to the right, just by, through sheer emotionalism or like the reactionary rhetoric. Usually it's about immigration. Once you get past that, there remains a lot of skepticism in the wider public. They may have won some people, but it's just not enough. And that's because those right-wing parties don't seem to have comprehensive and realistic social and economic policies. Like they just don't seem competent to run countries. And so until that happens, until the right presents itself in a competent manner, like in a way that you could see that they seem able to address the multiple problems of society, not just one, immigration. Once the right shows that it's competent and capable of addressing a whole slew of problems that need to be addressed, then they will be able to get more votes. But until then, they're going to stay away from the halls of power. They're just not going to get the votes. People could feel that. They maybe appreciate how the right is anti-immigration, but they don't feel confident enough about the right leading a country. Because leading a country is more than just solving immigration. So I hope the right wises up to some of this stuff and gets their act together and makes sensible policies. Because if they don't do it soon, and I'm actually worried about this, the social tensions we see now, they will just boil over. And we can have serious public order problems. What happened in Ceuta in Spain, I'm 100% sure that that's going to make people in Europe even angrier. And not just, oh, I'm angry in my base. No, like angry at minorities, Africans, Muslims. Like, I'll not be surprised if soon we're going to have a bunch of European white men walking around the streets and physically assaulting these people, like refugees and immigrants on the streets. In Rome, in Paris, London. Guys, if you think that's not going to happen, you're just not being really very realistic. I know there's a bunch of people online who are like, oh, nothing ever happens. The Europeans will never do anything. They'll never take any action. They just they'll allow the government to just keep shafting them. They'll never react because they're so weak and they're apathetic. It's like, no, man. Eventually they will. There's going to be a trigger point, and once it happens, in one place, it can spread like wildfire. So these problems have to be solved right now. And the right, I'm not pro-right or pro-left or anti-left or something. I'm just saying that the left does not seem to, I don't have any hope for the left to solve this problem. The right may solve this problem. They show to me some capability or willingness to solve this problem. So they're the only ones that can be relied on. But like I said, unless they also address the other major problems of society, they won't get into power. If this is not solved, whether by the left or by the right, and like I said, the left is not going to solve this problem, we're going to have real chaos and serious problems. Because people will be looking for radical changes, the consequences of which they will not fully understand, because they want to change it now, immediately. And so the right is the only one that has the opportunity, if they can offer a sensible and civilized new vision. And I hope they can do that, because otherwise, all this anti-immigration emotions that they're riding on right now, it's just going to expose them as hollow and phony. So the right needs to be more comprehensive. They need to look more competent. That's my advice to them. They have to be more presentable, more professional. They need to seem more organized. Not just be reactionary or emotional. They need to have a good economic plan. They need to have a sensible foreign policy, trade policy. I barely hear them talking about that. I just hear them talking about immigration. And that's not going to get him into power. Like, they could talk about immigration, but they have to talk about all those other things. And until that happens, they're just going to remain hollow and phony.